So welcome to the Scottish Sun's election preview. It's just under a week until the Holyrood election on May 7th. Chris Musson is here today, our Associate Editor and Columnist, and so is Lorna Hughes, another Associate Editor at the paper. We're going to take a quick look at the state of play before voters go to the polls. Chris, we'll start off with you. What's the polling telling us?
Yeah, I have charts here.
A chart.
So the polls haven't really moved very much at all since the start of the election campaign. We'll get on to why perhaps that is shortly, but there is obviously, in the Holyrood elections, there's a constituency vote and the regional vote. In the constituency vote, the SNP are on around 35% at the moment. Then we've got Reform and Labour, who are somewhere between 70 and 20%. Then we've got the Tories and the Lib Dems and the Greens somewhere around 10% of the constituency vote, though the Greens are only fielding in a handful of constituencies, we should say that. And on the regional vote, similar pattern, but the SNP are on slightly lower share. They're on the upper 20s or maybe 30% on that. And then the others are broadly similar. But the regional vote is where you'll see the big gains for the likes of the Lib Dems, the Greens, and indeed Reform.
So how is that looking in terms of seats when we get to the real kind of nail-biting results day?
Yeah, well, the projections are all over the place, and we've seen a lot of big polls. We've seen a lot of these MUP polls, these big analyses, and it's shown a huge broad range. I mean, we could have the SNP on anything from having a majority for the first time since 2011 to having in the low 50s or even lower seats, with a majority being 65. The others look to be way behind, and the big question is who is going to be able to form a government if nobody does hit a majority. Can they club together? Can the SNP club together with the Greens? Can Labour and the others club together on the other side? It is really, really up in the air.
Lorna, we've had almost 6 weeks now of flat-out campaigning. Is there a highlight from the last 6 weeks? It's been a weird election, hasn't it? It's been overshadowed by various things globally, like the Iran war, the Mandelson scandal in Westminster. But what's been your takeaway watching the politicians go at each other for the last few weeks?
I think it's interesting because this feels very different to other elections for lots of reasons. I feel as if the general public have had enough. They are not that interested, which is quite upsetting, and it should be concerning to all of them. I think that they are doing their best to do some blows. I certainly think that Malcolm offered of reform, announcing how many houses and how many boats he's got, was not one that you would have had in your bingo card at all, which I've never seen anything like that. So it's seeing, when you get something like that, I think that's when you go, right, maybe the public will get on board, but you get the impression that they're not really, they've had enough.
Yeah, for the avoidance of doubt, I only own one house, not 6, like Malcolm offered, but there you go.
7. But yes, this meh factor is what I called it in my column on Monday, that sort of seems to be engulfing the nation.
Politicians like to use the word scunnered, don't they? It's like their favourite way of describing voters without really any self-reflection.
I think it's because of that Scottish expression.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
they're trying to appeal to
really
certain
quite
demographic.
A clunky manner. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, as Lorna sort of touched on there, it's bad news, right? I mean, we don't want to see a turnout of 50% or below. Mm-hmm. In 2021, it was 63.5% turnout. That was quite unusually high for Scottish Parliament elections. We'd all obviously been cooped up, being subjected to daily broadcasts from, the First Minister of the time at the time. And I think everybody was sort of, quite tuned in, literally, to politics at that point. But yeah, people are now, I think, tired out. I was counting them up the other day, we've had, I think, 9 national elections or referenda since 2014. That's quite a lot, right, in just over a decade. That's not counting the council elections, or if you've been lucky enough to have a by-election for, an MSP or a councillor or an MP. There's that, and people are weary in general. People are, the cost of living crisis. People are increasingly sort of cynical, and there's just big things going on in the world, as you kind of touched on. There's the Middle East, there's the Ukraine, there's and there's all the stuff that's going on at Westminster too, right?
Yeah.
And I think there isn't people who vote, who want to go out to vote. You want to vote for something positive. You want to vote for something. And looking at the kind of what's on offer, it's very hard to see where the positivity is from any of them.
So on that, Lorna, what jumps out as either good or bad from what's on offer? Or is it just looking at it and going, oh?
Yeah, I think, having read a couple of the manifestos, I have concerns about some policies that are certainly the public don't want them. They weren't voted for or creeping back in. I think there's an element. I think it's that element of distrust. That we don't trust anybody. I think that the big elephant in the room is reform, because I think that they could have a hidden number that the polls are not showing of where their support could be. I think they're taking it. I think they'll take it off not only Tory voters, but Labour and the SNP as well. You only need to go into a housing scheme, a housing estate, and ask young men and women, and that's what they're saying. And that is, it may be, to some people it may not be a positive, but to the people who want to vote reform, that is a positive vote. Without even seeing proper policies, they are willing to say, do you know what, I'll toss the coin and let's try somebody new.
Yeah, and Chris, we've covered the SNP's food price cap plan extensively this election. Yeah. That's probably been the biggest ticket individual policy designed to get as many eyes on it as possible. I'll just read some of the criticism. It's been blasted as a potty gimmick by retailers. The former Rural Economy Secretary, Fergus Ewing, who was, when he was in the SNP government with responsibility for food and drink, slammed it as half-baked. There's concerns it could lead to food shortages, even be considered price fixing, and that's before we even get onto the criticism about it being a deliberate move to goad the UK government into a court fight. I mean, that's typical SNP, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and listen, and before I go into this rant, I've got words about Scottish Labour, who for a while have been the nearest contenders, but on this SNP policy, I think the moment I saw this policy in the manifesto, I kind of groaned internally, probably.
I think I heard you, actually.
Because it's transparently the most manipulative, cynical gimmick that I think I have seen in a manifesto. For this to be their flagship manifesto pledge is appalling, because the reality, as far as I'm concerned, is they have no intention of this ever happening. So this is a policy, in my opinion, which is designed simply for a scrap, right? Simply for a fight. And they know that A, they haven't got the powers to do it, and B, if they had, it's a stupid idea, as has been seen by the commentary across the board. Not just from groups who you might say would have an interest, like supermarkets, like all the big economic think tanks have said, this is a terrible idea for the reasons you just outlined. It could backfire spectacularly if it ever came in, but they've not got no intention of it ever coming in. But and this is why I said manipulative at the start, because they are actually giving voters false hope deliberately, right? I would say it's not even much hope there, because supermarket prices for these staples are already like loss leaders, right? So you can look at that to start with and say, well, why is this even necessary? But they are making people believe that they are going to improve the cost of living for people with this policy, when, well, as I say, it wouldn't even work anyway, but they've got no intention of doing it. It is purely intended to start a fight with Westminster and to say, look at all our evil rivals who are trying to stop us from doing this great thing to lift you up.
You're right, it's the moral superiority it gives them again, to be able to say anybody who opposes this, is not thinking in the best interests of Scotland, when, ultimately it's utter nonsense, and it would fail in any subsequent court battle that has to come their way.
Let's talk about Scottish Labour. You mentioned them, Chris, but we'll come back to you. voters are, I think, desperate for change. I think we can all agree that that's the feeling on the ground. Lorna, do you think Scottish Labour, despite their campaign rhetoric, despite all of their big signs with change written over it, do you think they've actually offered it? Do you think anyone is actually offering change at this election?
I mean, to be fair to Anas Sarwar, he's obviously done his, shall we call it a separation or a divorce from Keir Starmer. So he is trying to say that that is the change and he is the change and he will not be told what to do by London. I don't know how that will wash. I mean...
It's come a bit late, hasn't it, really?
Absolutely. And again, it comes back to the trust element. I mean, a lot of people will have been felt very let down by Labour in the last year. And whether that's down south or not, that is going to have an impact, definitely.
Chris, you said you had words about Scottish Labour?
Well, I mean, Scottish Labour's big argument, right, is that the SNP have had 19 years in power. It's time to give Scottish Labour a go. And as Lorna said, they've gone back now to this big change message, having been embarrassed about it for the last 2 years because it's so closely tied with Starmer this words. Labour went off on this...
new direction, wasn't it?
A new direction with the New Direction slogan, right? Because they were like, oh, how can we say change but not change? New direction. But obviously that's clunky and rubbish. Yeah. And they're like, oh, right, let's just say change again. But, right, okay, 19 years the SNP have had in power, which, yeah, I think is far too long and it is time for a change. But what are Scottish Labour offering? When I looked at their manifesto, there was a groan too, because it is incredibly small C conservative. There are things in there that I like, right? But all in all, it is not the most daring document you will ever see, to say the least. And yeah, Scottish Labour have had 19 years to come up with something. And is this it? That was my initial thought. Now, there are things I like in it. I do think they are starting to look at tackling the NHS structurally. But a lot of this is not sexy stuff and they know it, right? You know, this big policy that they were talking about again in the last few days about the money following the patient and therefore introducing a degree of competition between health boards so they buck up their act, reducing the number of health boards and a bit of NHS structural reform there, which could well help. It's not sexy stuff, but it's stuff that the SNP have been unwilling to do now since they've come in, and we've just seen a continued decline, right? That stuff is welcome, but all in all, there's not a hell of a lot in there. Which
that's also before we talk about the fact that the whole thing is predicated on a growth forecast, that the economists have said, well, this is the likelihood of this ever coming to pass is slim to zero, and that's the basis of what you're saying you should do for the next 5 years. I mean, it's as dishonest in a way as Keir Starmer's 2024 manifesto was based on growth as well. Let's talk a bit about the Tories. They're currently second, Lorna. It looks like they may end up fourth, potentially on a really bad day. They might even end up behind the Greens and the Lib Dems. Do you think they've been badly impacted by reform? That seems to be where a lot of their support has leaked to. I
think they've become a bit lost in the mix, which is a shame, because a lot of what they're saying, you know, if you take away the word Tory and you just heard what is, a lot of it's common sense. Now, I find that quite...
favourite phrase.
I find that, you know, quite difficult to actually say. But, you know, on a lot of the major issues that we have had for the last, certainly, 5 years or so, they have felt, for a lot of people, as if they're speaking common sense. However, you put reform into the mix, and yes, there's absolutely no doubt that they're going to lose seats, and it could get as bad as last.
Do you think Russell Findlay sticks around after the election?
I don't know. Why are you asking me that, Conor?
Just curious. I've got predictions later on, so we'll get to that a bit. Chris, what do you think about the Tories? I mean, this could be apocalyptically bad.
I mean, it could. I mean, they've got this issue, and Russell's got this issue that, like, people aren't really listening to them. I mean, people aren't really listening to a lot of devolved politicians in general, right? We've established that recently about the Westminster hoovering up all the attention, but, you know, a lot of people don't even know who Russell is. We had reporters out last week, I think it was, traipsing the streets with pictures of all the leaders to say, do you know who these people are? I think John Swinney did best out of 30 people, highly scientific survey. 30 people, like I think 24 recognised John Swinney, but there was only a fewer than 10 recognised like Russell Finlay. I think, in fact, it was maybe fewer than 5. And the numbers weren't much better for,
that's what shocked me
for all
the
the
most.
others, right?
The public, even though it's a small sample, don't know who these people are. And, you know, they only know Swinney because he's been hanging around for so long.
Yeah, I know. If you don't know John Swinney after 30 years or whatever he's been hanging about.
There's an argument that we're unfortunate that we do know who all of these people are.
Yeah, I know.
What people on the street think.
That's right. I mean, sometimes I think we kid ourselves that these people are better known than they are. And I think Scotland as a whole sort of luxuriated in this thing after the independence referendum that, oh, look, we're all so engaged. We had 85% of people turning out for the independence referendum, but, you know, interest has certainly slipped since then, particularly in what's going on in devolved politics, unfortunately.
John Swinney, you mentioned him. He's told us before, he said this repeatedly, that he's going to be fighting the 2031 election, never mind winning this one. There's a lot of people who disagree, including Stephen Flynn, who looks like he'll be winging his way up from Westminster and maybe ruffling a few feathers in Holyrood once he's here. No one really believes that John Swinney's going to stick around until 2031, do they?
No, and John Swinney doesn't believe he's going to stick around. He wanted to get out, you know, and it was thanks to Humza Yousaf that he is in the seat that he's in now. You know, I would be utterly amazed. I mean, if he loses some more seats than would be regarded as bad, then I think he'll go anyway. And I think Flynn is sitting waiting in the wings, although he's got Mary McCallum as well.
Yeah, and you can sort of see two kind of camps emerging quite quickly behind those two people. I mean, Flynn is like, certainly, he's had a glint in his eye, hasn't he, for like several years now.
Took down Blackford, he and Blackford, the Westminster leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Ever since that moment.
Yeah. Which was very Machiavellian as well.
Yeah.
And also he is... it was said to me, and I think this is true, that he's very charismatic and, you know, he's got the ability to get people behind him, but he hasn't actually had, you know, given a major speech or, you know, has a great policy idea that we've heard. So,
last question before we do predictions and then wrap this up, which is about tactical voting, Chris. Experts have said that there's a lot of tactical voting at this election, that Scots have spent a lot of time thinking about who they want to vote for. As much tactical voting, arguably more, I think, about stopping the SNP as there is about stopping reform. I mean, given the likelihood that we have a low turnout at this election, how big of an impact could that way of voting among voters have on the results?
I mean, it can have a huge impact, right? But actually working out what the heck is going to happen and who follows what in which tactical voting guides, etc., makes the picture extremely complicated, and there's scope for it to go badly wrong for various parties as well. I mean, the makeup of the 73 constituencies is very varied across Scotland, right? And you have these three-way races creeping in, especially, you know, between the SNP and Labour and Reform. And it's very difficult to work out on the ground, you know, where the momentum lies and who's going to roll in behind who. If it's going to benefit anybody, tactical voting as a whole, it may well end up benefiting the SNP because, you know, they're going to have this solid, I think they're going to have this kind of solid block, and the maths is very much in the SNP's favour as regards this entire election with Reform, splitting the Labour, you know, grabbing the Labour and Tory vote. It's actually quite difficult for the SNP to lose in a lot of these constituencies.
So, prediction time. Lorna, who's going to be First Minister for the next 5 years?
I don't know if it'll be John Swinney, but probably if I was putting a bet on it, it would certainly be the SNP, somebody within the SNP.
Chris?
Russell Finlay, only joking. It's going to be John Swinney.
John Swinney.
And he might stick around longer than a lot of people think as well.
Chris, does the SNP get the majority?
No.
Lorna?
No.
Is there a pro-independence majority, Lorna?
Possibly, yes.
Yes or no? Go on, stick your colours to the mast.
Maybe.
No, that's still yes or no?
I don't know. I think Chris has outlined exactly all the difficulties with all of this. That
I'll leap in and save Lorna here. I hope there isn't, right? I really hope there isn't a pro-independence majority because it is going to dominate like the next couple of years when we need a real focus on like rebuilding these knackered public services in Scotland, right? Like an independence, I would never say never to independence, right? But it's just not going to happen in the next few years. John Swinney doesn't really want an independence referendum in the next few years. He knows it's absolutely insane. So let's just put that aside and focus on, the day job without wishing to sound like Ruth Davidson of 5 years ago.
Lorna, Chris, thank you very much. Voters go to the poll on May 7th. Make sure you go out. Make sure your choice is heard.